ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। O Sri Ramakrishna, the establisher of all eternal religion, the embodiment of all religions, and the best of all the incarnations of God, we salute you. In the last reading, we stopped at page number 154 of this book we are reading, Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master. So we will start today from page 155, para 4. The discussion was going on about Rani Rasmani, her credentials for establishing this great temple at Dakshineshwar. The topic continues here. The Rani, it is said, had cherished in her heart for a long time a strong desire to go to Kashi and pay obeisance and offer special worship to Vishweshwara, the Lord of the universe, and Annapurna, the Divine Mother. It is also said that she had collected and set apart a vast sum of money for that purpose. But as her husband had died suddenly, and she had to shoulder the responsibility of managing the whole property, she had not been able to carry out her intention so far. Now that her sons-in-law had learned to help her in this manner, and particularly the youngest, Mathura Mohan, had become her right hand, she was getting ready to start for Kashi. When everything was ready, she had the vision of Goddess Kali in a dream the night before her departure. The goddess gave her this instruction: there is no need to go to Kashi. Install my stone image in a beautiful spot on the banks of the Bhagirathi, that is Ganga, and arrange for my daily worship and food offering. I shall manifest myself in that image and accept your worship daily. The devout Rani was highly delighted to receive this instruction. She put off going to Kashi and made up her mind to spend the accumulated money on that holy undertaking. So all the money she had accumulated for that, so she would spend on erecting a temple. We cannot say how far that rumor is true. The rumor that she got the instruction from Goddess herself, whether it is true or not, as a historian, he says, no, we cannot be very sure about it. But it is certain that the Rani's long accumulated devotion to the Mother of the Universe was about to assume a visible form in the shape of the temple and the beautiful image. She purchased a spacious piece of land on the bank of the Bhagirathi, spent a large sum of money, and began to build on it a big temple with 9 spires and other small temples for Shiva, etc., and laid out a garden attached to them. Though the work of construction was going on for 7 or 8 years, the whole edifice was incomplete even in AD 1855. So it was taking more than almost 80 years. But the Rani reflected within herself, as life is uncertain, the desire of installing the Mother of the Universe may not be fulfilled in my lifetime if it takes such a long time to complete the temple. So she felt the urgency to complete the construction of the temple and inauguration of the temple. Revolving in her mind thus, the Rani had the ceremony of the installation of the Mother performed on this Snan Yatra day on May 31st, AD 1855. After that thought came the earliest good day for the consecration of the temple was this. So May 31st, AD 1855. As it is necessary for the reader to know a few events that took place before this, we narrate them below. The Rani's desire to offer cooked food to the goddess. The daily cooked food is to be offered, so she wanted to make arrangement for that also. Either because of the instruction she received from the goddess herself, because the goddess herself told her, "You install me there, I will receive your worship, I will manifest in that image, and daily worship through offering food also should be done." That was the instruction of mother. So she received from the goddess herself the instruction, or out of a natural hankering of her heart. For devotees always love to serve their chosen ideals with things they consider best. There arose a great eagerness in the mind of the Rani to offer food daily to the mother. So temple construction was there. So many people have done. The special feature of this temple was the daily offering of food, cooked food by Brahmins, and then that will be served to hundreds and thousands of visitors. The Rani thought, temples and other buildings have been built to my liking. I am going to dedicate property sufficient enough for the carrying on of the service. But in spite of doing all this, if I cannot serve the goddess to my heart's content and offer her cooked food daily, everything will be in vain. It will fetch me at the most a little name. People will say, Rani Rasmani has left behind her such a glory. So this is all the little fame I will get. But of what avail are such words to the people to me? She had already got enough praise and encomium. O Mother of the Universe, she fervently prayed, Thou hast given me much name and fame in other projects, in other respects, but in this case, do not befool me by giving me this trash of good name and fame. It does not matter whether fame accrues to me or not, but pray, remain always actually manifested here and fulfill the heart's desire of the servant of thine by accepting daily service of food offering also, she means. So she fervently prayed. She said, I am not very interested in getting my name, but I want my heart to be satisfied that food is being served to you daily and you are accepting the food and the devotees are accepting the prasad from yours. The Rani saw that her low birth and the custom of society were the main obstacles standing in the way of her offering cooked food. Her own heart, however, never doubted that the Mother of the Universe would accept her offering of cooked food. In fact, for her heart was always full of joy at that thought. So when a person feels real joy at the thought, especially concerning the goddesses and gods, his intention is very good. Therefore, God mostly fulfills her or his desire. So she thought she will certainly accept the food daily. For that, proper arrangement will be made against all the prevailing custom and the scriptural injunctions. That is how she felt and was never hesitant. She never felt hesitant. No, I will not be able to do. Why was then that improper custom come? Why is it current? Who wrote the scriptures? She was getting angry. Whatever stood as an obstacle to her serving the goddess. So she was thinking like this: who wrote the scriptures? Was the author of the scriptures a heartless man who should prevent a devotee to offer daily food to mother and be happy? So he doesn't want to fulfill the heart desire of a devotee. Or urged by the self interest, did he ordain a right for the higher caste, superior even to the goddess? Goddess is pleased. She has told her, so I will accept your uh, whatever you offer. But then it is this men, these Brahmins and the priestly class, they are standing in the way. So she says, is the people higher than goddess herself? Goddess want to accept my offerings daily in the form of cooked food, and these people are standing in the way. She thought for herself like that. If so, she had no use for the scriptures. That means she would not obey the scriptures. She would rather follow the sacred longings of her heart. But what was the way out even then? Suppose she does not care for this scriptural injunction. She goes on inaugurating the temple. And then what would happen at that time? Were she to act against the prevailing custom, the devout Brahmins and good people would not come to the temple to take prasad. So if I open a big temple, a lot of prasad is cooked, there is nobody to take it. So what would happen at that time? What was then the solution? The Rani had the written opinions of Pandits brought from various places again. But none of them was to her liking, because they all of them must have been struck by the scriptures or the prevailing custom. So they were all conservatives, you see. They could not revolutionarily find out what was the real meaning of the scriptures. So they were all giving the hackneyed solution that it is not possible for Brahmins and the priestly class to take the food offered there. It is not their custom. Ram Kumar gave his opinion in her favor. Although the construction of the temple and the making of the image had been completed, there was no sign of the fulfillment of the Rani's desire to serve her means the goddess to her heart's content. That is by offering cooked food. The Rani had scriptural prescriptions from the scholars, big and small, but failed to have her wish fulfilled. When all her hopes were almost dashed to the ground, one day a prescription came from the Chatushpati at Jhamapukur, which was being run by Ramkumar, which read, if the Rani makes a gift of the property to a Brahmin and he installs the goddess in the temple and makes arrangements about the offering of cooked rice, the principle of the scriptures will be accurately observed, and the Brahmins and other high castes will not then incur blemish if they take prasada in the temple. This was the Ramkumar's prescription. And it will be, she has to dedicate the temple. That means hand over all the property in a way to her guru. Her guru was a Brahmin. So the Brahmin, it becomes a Brahmin's temple. And that is how she could make it acceptable to all the higher castes. They would all come and take prasad. That was Ramkumar's prescription. The Rani decided to consecrate the temple. After receiving this instruction, hopes revived in the Rani's heart. She decided to consecrate the temple in the name of her Guru and with his permission, Guru's permission, take the possession of an officer for superintending his property and the service in his temple. Afterwards, the Rani informed other Pandits of her intention of following the scriptural prescription given by Ramkumar. Although they did not dare say plainly that it would be an unscriptural action, they nevertheless said, because they could not say it is unscriptural. Ramkumar was a very great scholar, so they cannot say no to him. Otherwise, they would get into controversy with them. They may be defeated in the controversy. For fear of that, they did not say it is unscriptural. They took the other stand. What was the other stand? Nevertheless, they said the action is against the prevailing custom. That prevailing custom is not scripture. So it has been prevailing. No Brahmin or priestly class will take food from a Kaivarta temple. So it's custom that is coming down. So we are not going to throw away this custom. We are going to hold on to it. The custom of society, the Brahmins and other good people will not take prasad there, even though it is done that way. Scriptural way, you may dedicate the temple, but the customs are here. So hundreds of years of customs, it may be superstition, but nobody is ready to give up that superstition. And there is, as a whole group, one is holding to the other, very strong against this opening of the temple, even though it is scriptural. And they said we cannot take the cooked food or offered food in that temple. Ram Kumar's Catholicity. Ram Kumar had sent the prescription that it can be made scriptural. So he again comes into the picture. So he shows his Catholicity. We can very well infer that the Rani's attention was very much attracted to Ram Kumar by this event. When one ponders, one finds that to issue such a prescription in those days was indicative of not a little Catholicity on the part of Ram Kumar, because the whole society of priests were against it. Ram Kumar gave a prescription against the whole society. So he must have been revolutionary in his own field. The minds of the Brahmin Pandits, the leaders of society, had got confined to a narrow groove in those days. There were few amongst them who could step out of it, read the liberal meaning in the injunctions of the scriptures, and give opinions according to circumstances. Consequently, people felt an inclination to set at naught their opinions. The Rani's search for a suitable priest. Now, the Ram Kumar has given the prescription for opening the temple, and also now she has to find out a priest for that, the main temple. The connection of the Rani with the Ram Kumar, however, did not end there. Although she paid proper respect to the members of the family of her spiritual teacher, the intelligent Rani observed distinctly their ignorance of the scriptures and unfitness to perform divine service according to them. So she felt that because it's all sort of a Kula Guru system, so they didn't have much quality or qualification for holding that high post of conducting a temple according to scriptural rites day in and day out. So she did not feel confident of her own gurus and their officiating other priests under him. Therefore, she made up her mind to see that the whole charge of the service of the new temple was permanently placed in the hands of Brahmins of virtuous conduct. They must be highly moral, they must be highly ethical. So such Brahmins to take charge of the temple. See the high ambitions of this Rani Rasmani. She thinks really in terms of spiritual life. Spiritual life is that goes deep into the character of persons. So she wanted such spiritual person to take charge of this temple and conduct. So she, of virtuous conduct, well versed also in the scriptures. They should also know the scriptures, taking care at the same time that the just and proper farewell gifts due to her guru's family were not affected. But she would not deprive her guru of any of the financial benefits he was getting from her hand. Because then, he would have no grows. Let her employ anyone who may do the puja. Because I am not affected. She is giving me all the financial assistance she was giving. So, Guru will also be pleased. So she said she will do that. She will pay the Guru what it is to be done. Her Guru from the custom she has accepted, and then he will go for another good Pandit of high moral character and highly well versed in scriptures. That was how she thought. Here again, the prevailing custom of society stood in her way. In those days, the Brahmins born of good families and devoted to religious traditions did not even salute the deities installed by Shudras, let alone worshipping them. So, if other than the Brahmins, if installed the deities, these higher caste people, they would not even salute the deity. The person was installed, you can understand he is a human being. You can do whatever you want with him. But then deity, it is always opposed to all human beings. They did not care for even the deity. They would not salute him or her, the deities also, if it was installed by anybody other than the Brahmins. They regarded the degraded Brahmins, such as the family of Rani's spiritual teacher, virtually as Shudras. So, for namesake only, some of the Brahmins were officiating for the other people who were not Brahmins. These people used to consider them also as fallen Brahmins. So they would not care. Those Brahmins are going, if you say, oh, they are all fallen Brahmins. We don't want to follow them. That is how they were so conservative. It was therefore no wonder that no Brahmin of virtuous conduct, able to perform worship and officiate as a priest, agreed to take charge of the worship in the Rani's temple. So this was the obstacle. However, the Rani did not give up hope, and increasing the remuneration and the pay, continued to search for a priest in various places. The home of Hemangini Devi, the master's cousin, was in the village of Shihor. So Mahesh Chandra, an officer of the Rani, took the responsibility of procuring priests. She had some employees also, and one of them was Mahesh Chandra. So this Mahesh Chandra, he had contact with this high virtuous Brahmins. So he said, I will bring some good Brahmins who will do puja. Many Brahmins lived there, that is in Sihor. Mahesh Chandra Chattopadhyaya of that village served in the estate of the Rani, maybe some as a treasurer or somebody. Thinking perhaps that he might be able to earn a little money thereby, he came forward to procure Brahmins for the Rani's temples to work as priests, cooks, etc. Mahesh undertook to make that arrangement and selected his own elder brother, Kshetranath, for the post of a priest in the temple of Radha Govinda. Along with the Kali temple, if you visit the Dakshineshwar, along with Kali temple, there is the Radha Kanta temple, Radha Krishna's temple. And then there is also 12 temples for Shiva. All these are to be having the master priest and also other assistants. So all those things have to be arranged. So this Mahesh Chandra took that responsibility, either with a view to convincing the poor Brahmins of the village that accepting employment in Rani's temples was not reprehensible, or with a view to improving the pecuniary condition of his family, or both. Why not reprehensible? Because their own relative, Ram Kumar, is going there. He has given this prescription. So these Brahmins, many of them agreed. So he procured some of them. As he appointed one of his own family to work for the Rani, it became easy to a great extent to procure other Brahmins for service in the temples. So this Mahesh Chandra was a sincere person. His own brother he appointed him, got appointed to the Radha Govinda temple. So when his own brother has been appointed, he is also a Brahmin of the same village. So other Brahmins, they also accepted to take up any other jobs that were there. But he became very anxious when, in spite of much effort, he could not procure a fit priest for the Kali temple. The main temple is Kali temple. So Kali temple, nobody agreed because it requires great proficiency, must be a great scholar, and then at the same time a virtuous man. With such qualification, it was difficult to find out one. So he was also unable to procure the real person that was wanted, that is the priest for the main Kali temple. The Rani requested Ram Kumar to accept the office of the priest. Under the circumstances, what happened? Mahesh had been for a long time acquainted with Ram Kumar. It seems they had a conventional relationship established between them, which we can infer from the village custom. It was not unknown to Mahesh Chandra that Ram Kumar was a devout sadhaka, that means a spiritual aspirant, and had long ago become initiated in the mantra of Shakti of his own accord. He himself had got initiated by a proper guru and he was practicing the Shakti puja. That is a great qualification of becoming the pujari or the priest of the Kali temple. We infer that Mahesh knew of the want and insufficiency in Ram Kumar's household. So he knew the poverty in Ram Kumar's house. So his attention was drawn to Ram Kumar at the time of seeking a priest for the temple of the Mother Kali. But the next moment he remembered that Ram Kumar was a Brahmin who did not officiate in sacrifices performed by non-Brahmins. Although he sometimes accepted the post of priest in the houses of Digambar Mitra, who was not a Brahmin, and others in Calcutta. They were all very rich people. So, for the sake of money, he was officiating and doing puja of deities there in their house, household deities. Would he accept it in the temple of Nimrani, who was a Kaivarta by birth? It was very doubtful. This is how Mahesh Chandra thinks. But the day for the installation of the goddess was near at hand, and a suitable priest was not available yet. Revolving all this in his mind, Mahesh thought it reasonable to make an effort once at least in that direction of procuring Ram Kumar as the priest for the Kali temple. However, he did not himself immediately set about doing that. He told the Rani everything and asked her to invite and request Ram Kumar to accept the office of the priest for the day of the installation at least and perform all the rites on that day. The Rani had already a high opinion of Ram Kumar's fitness as she got the scriptural prescription from him. So she was much delighted at the prospect of his officiating as a priest and sent him word with great humility. She was a very rich lady and well respected in all the rich circles. So she, with all humility, she wrote like this: I am now ready to install the Mother of the universe on the strength of your prescription. She is writing to Ram Kumar. According to your prescription only, this Mother's temple has been completed. And I also arranged everything in order to perform the ceremony at an auspicious moment on the way of coming Snan Yatra, on the day of the coming Snan Yatra. We have got a priest for Radha Govinda, but no suitable Brahmin is coming forward to officiate as the priest of the Mother Kali and help me in the act of her installation. Therefore, please make an arrangement that may seem possible to you and deliver me from this predicament. As you are a good scholar, well versed in the scriptures, it is needless for me to tell you that anyone and everyone cannot be appointed to officiate as the priest. See the humility of the Rani and devotion and on the faith in Ram Kumar, her language. Mahesh himself went to Ram Kumar with a letter conveying the request. He explained the situation to him in various ways and prevailed upon him to agree to officiate as the priest until a suitable one was available. What Rani thought was, at least on the installation day, let him come. Let him see the installation ceremony through. On that day, cooked food will be done and it will be offered, and he will also take, being a Brahmin, the cooked food offered to Mother Kali, and other priests who are going to come on that day, they will also take. So things will have started. So afterwards, things may continue. That was the idea of Rani. She wanted for acceptance for at least one day on the opening day. But see the Catholicity of Ram Kumar. He says, agreed to officiate as the priest until a suitable one was available. The devout Ram Kumar, devoid of avarice, came at first to Dakshineshwar that the installation of the Universal Mother should have to be given up. See his real love for Mother. Here is the Rani Rasmani, a devotee of Mother, and here is the Orthodox Brahmin, highly virtuous, would not accept the gifts of other people other than the Brahmin. He throws away all those customs, then comes to officiate as the priest, not only on that day, until a new proper priest is found. He did not have the idea of continuing there continuously, but at least he would help the temple to continue. Until the priest was found, he would officiate as a priest. Then, when the new priest properly qualified would come, he would quit and go his own way. That was his idea. Then, at the humble request of the Rani and Mathur Babu, he lived there for the rest of his life. He came for only one day, but Mother's grace was there upon him and he has become immortal, being the first Pujari of the great temple of Dakshineshwar, Bhavatarini Kali, with whom Sri Ramakrishna talked, frolicked, made merriment, moved about everywhere. His Divine Mother, her temple, the first Pujari, was Sri Ramakrishna's eldest brother. So what a great grace of Divine Mother on that Getlu. Rani, the request of the Rani and Mathur Babu, then at the humble request of them, he lived there for the rest of his life, as he saw that there was no other suitable place available. See that Mother Kali, who had to guide Sri Ramakrishna and reveal to the world the greatest incarnation of this age. So this mother, would she accept anybody else than a priest like Ram Kumar, virtuous and adept in scriptures, and without any avarice, without any desire for any other benefit other than the love and blessings from mother? Such a great person. Without accepting how will she accept anyone else? That is how he got the priesthood, first priest of the great temple of Dakshineshwar of Bhavatarini. All events of the world, great or small, come to pass by the will of the Divine Mother. Who can say whether or not Ram Kumar, a devotee of the goddess, knew the will of the source of all wills and accepted that office? So these authors, Sharadanandaji's remark, perhaps Ram Kumar himself must have felt or must have got some divine order within himself that go and accept as the priest, I want you to come, something like that. That is how he might have accepted, though he would not have expressed it. So the author suspects something like that must have happened also. So in all ways, the desire of Divine Mother was being fulfilled. Installation of the goddess by the Rani. The Rani got Ram Kumar to officiate as the priest that unexpected way and installed the Mother of the Universe in the new temple. The Rani got Ram Kumar to officiate as the priest that unexpected way, as I was telling, and installed the Mother of the Universe in the new temple with great pomp on Thursday, May 31st, 1855 AD, the day of the Snan Yatra. It is said that on that occasion the temple was continuously filled day and night with the noise of the feasts and festivities. The Rani spent money unstintingly and did her best to make all the guests and others as happy as herself. Many professors of the Shastras and Brahmin Pandits came on that occasion from places famous for scholars, places such as the distant Kanyakubja, Kashi, Sylhet, Chittagong, Orissa, Navadvip, etc. Each of them got a silk cloth, a wrapper, and gold coins as farewell presents. The Rani, it is said, spent 900,000 rupees, 9 lakhs rupees, on the building and the consecration ceremony of the temple. She purchased from Trilokanath Thakur for 226,000 rupees the Shalbari Pargana of the subdivision of Thakurgaon in the district Dinajpur, now it is in Pakistan, and executed a deed of gift and dedicated the property to the service of the deities. So 9 lakhs of rupees for the temple and consecration, and another more than 2.5, almost 2.5 lakhs of rupees for endowment for continuing the service. Some say that Ram Kumar was given provisions and he cooked them on that day with his own hands on the bank of Ganga. And the offering cooked food to his own chosen ideal, he took it as prasada. But this sounds improbable, for Rajkumar, a devotee of the goddess, had himself given the prescription about offering up cooked food, according to his knowledge of the scriptures, and without the expectation of any gain. It is quite unreasonable that he himself should not take that offered food and should act against his own prescription and the injunction of the devotional scriptures. The Master also did not tell us so. Therefore, our impression is that at the end of the worship, he took joyfully the cooked food offered to the Mother of the Universe. But although the Master joined the joyous festival, Master Sri Ramakrishna is a young boy of 17 years, young man, joyous festival wholeheartedly. He acted according to his strict principle. He had his own strict principle. Elder brother Ram Kumar, he has taken food of the Kali, but I have got my own reservation for that. We will hear about his reservation. He did not take Mother's Prasad on that day. He thought he bought from the neighboring market a pice worth of fried rice at the approach of the evening and ate it before he walked back to the school at Jamapukur for his rest at night. So Sri Ramakrishna did not accept the prasad from the Kali temple, whereas his elder brother accepted it. See how strange things happen. But later on, when we see, it happens only to glorify the person. Sri Ramakrishna is glorified for this act. We will see how he was steadfast in some of his convictions. So unless, he had strong reasons to change his conviction, he would never give up his convictions. That was his habit. So here also, he said, my father and their ancestors, they did not accept food from a Kaivarta lady. So why I should accept? My elder brother has accepted, but that is no reason that you should accept. So that was the argument. So this young man of 17 years, he did not fall in line with his elder brother, who was a great scholar was honored by Rani Rasmani, but he would say, my convictions are convictions, I will not change unless I have got enough reasons for it. So this the greatness of the other person. What the master said about the founding of the Kali temple. The master himself told us on many occasions many things about the founding by Rasmani of the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. He used to say, Rani Rasmani made ready to go to Kashi, the abode of Vishwanatha and Annapurna. She fixed a day for starting and had about 100 boats, small and big, laden with various articles at the ghat. She was carrying cows also for fresh milk, so she could take 2 or 3 months for her to return. So she wants fresh milk and all the food, etc., exactly in the same style as she was having in her house in Calcutta. So in the 600 boats, she was going to Varanasi. And it is said she was carrying cows also in some of the boats. And of course, all other provisions, other things of luxury also, perhaps to present to others. So 100 boats laden with all the things. So she left. She got a prohibitory instruction from the goddess on the night immediately before the day of starting and gave up that resolve. This is what Sri Ramakrishna told his disciples, including Sharadananda, who is the author of this book. She then engaged herself in searching for a fit plot of land to build the temple on. When the mother said, you don't have to go to Kashi, she started searching for a plot of land. He said further, Sri Ramakrishna tells further to his disciples, under the conviction that the western bank of Ganga is comparable to Varanasi, she at first searched for a piece of land in villages like Bali and Uttarpara on the western bank of the Ganga, but failed to get one. So as far back as in 1855, she could not get a plot. And after another almost 40 years or 45 years, Swami Vivekananda wanted to buy a plot of land near Uttarpara. They would not allow him to purchase anything. Those landlords were so proud, in our land we will not allow anybody else to come and then stay. So they would not allow anyone to purchase any land there. So they obstructed Rani, and after 45 years they obstructed Vivekananda also. Of course, now things have all changed there. At that time, things were like that. Anybody could stop anyone on any small reason, and if they're strong enough, so they could hold on to their own decisions. So that was under the conviction that the western bank of the Ganga is comparable to Varanasi. She at first searched for a piece but failed. For although the Rani was ready to pay a vast sum of money, the famous landlords of those places said that they would not come to the Ganga down a ghat constructed at the cost of anyone else at any place in their possession. Therefore, the Rani was compelled at last to buy this plot on the eastern bank of Ganga. So on the other side is Uttarpara, opposite is Dakshineshwar. So she went on the other side of Ganga and purchased the present Dakshineshwar temple site. So the Rani was compelled at last to buy this plot, Sri Ramakrishna confirms. So there is a history behind everything. You see, this Swami Sharadananda's narration, in that not only giving us the details connected with Sri Ramakrishna's life, he is giving the social things, social status or social situation of that time. To buy a land of land, you had problems. To do a puja in a temple, you had problems. So the conservatism was everywhere. People had lost free thinking, independent thinking, courage to put into action what they thought as right. All these mental abilities had become weak. So the whole thing had to be rebuilt. That is how Sri Ramakrishna came. That is how Swami Vivekananda was brought with him. So we will see the same story continuing, and we will see what wonderful changes this country has gone through to rise to the present situation. We will continue the story in the next reading, the next class. Till then, goodbye, Jai Ram Krishna. निरञ्जनं नित्यमनन्तरूपं भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं परमेशमीड्यं तं रामकृष्णं शिरसा नमामः. O Ramakrishna, the taintless, the eternal, of infinite forms, who has assumed form only out of compassion to devotees, the incarnation of God, and the adorable Supreme Lord, we salute you with our heads down.